welcome to the Aware Show presents Rising Stars. Rising Stars, people that are doing amazing work in the world that have incredible journeys to share, incredible stories to share. And I get to talk to them about their journeys, and you get to see yourself through them. You get to experience your life through their journey. And today is an absolutely fabulous woman with an incredible journey. Just have you ever felt called to something, but you're stuck with it no matter what? And you want to answer that calling because it just keeps nudging you and nudging you and nudging you. Well, this is the case for rising star today, Jacquie Faber. Jacquie was it was pretty much a matter of survival for her to stick with her calling. And at a very young age, Jacquie was told that she would never amount to much and that she was called stupid in her household. So that calling called her to leave home, to get out, to just leave home and never return. And she wanted to prove to herself that she could stand up for herself, repair her and refine and regain her voice. And now she is writing a fabulous memoir called 50s, Hippies, and Almost Enlightenment. And it's for anyone who's ever chosen a really, really difficult path and stuck with it no matter what. Hello, Jacquie.
Hello, Lisa, dear.
Oh,
Lovely to see you, and thank you so much for encouraging me to come on your program.
well, you have such a great story, and I can just see this. It's kind of a Thelma and Louise, but just the Thelma, you know? It's great because, well, I mean, first of all, 50s, growing up in the 50s, tell me a little bit about that and, how you experienced that being told you were not good enough.
In the beginning, it was a wonderful time in the 50s, though I didn't think so. They had Howdy Doody on, and television just happened, and all the kids in the neighborhood got together, and we were able to go out and lie in the grass and look at the stars and play a little. But I had a challenging childhood for sure. And while all the other kids were playing, I had lots of work to do, but I did have a best friend who helped me and a mom and dad who were ill prepared to be parents, but did the best they could.
And so lots of work meaning chores and things to do around the house.
Right. Lots of things, sweeping the patio every day and, helping my mother with her dishes
Mm.
um, and I didn't really mind any of it. I really actually loved helping out.
That
But
was the simple part of it.
that was the simple part of it. But because my parents were so unhappy and they couldn't deal with a precocious child, I think I was just too much for them. I asked too many questions and to get,
Oh, that explains your curiosity. That's what I know
yeah.
you to
So I
be
think,
is very
yes.
curious. I think that part of that precocious nature that you say is really what a sensitive, intuitive child is misdiagnosed as precocious. I think that you had what many of us have that were born fairies or light workers, or whatever. We were just intuitive and open-hearted and ready to take on the world because that's why we came here. And then what happened?
Well, when I was 9 years old, it was just before my brother was born. My parents, for 2 years, they were fighting every day and yelling and screaming. And I would help my mother wipe the dishes, and my and she didn't like the way she was. I think she was OCD. And I didn't know that at the time.
Mm.
And so she would always scream about that I didn't wipe all the water off the dishes. And then that would irritate my father. And he would be sitting in his brown Naugahyde chair in the front room, and he'd be trying to get out of his chair like a gorilla trying to get up. And he'd come pounding out and say, I'm going to kill her. I'm going to kill her. I'm going to kill her. And my mother would sometimes she would try to defend me, but sometimes she wouldn't. And when she didn't, he'd pretty much just beat me. And that repetitively happened. And it was pretty tough because, well, you know, I think the words were more hard to deal with than the physical violence, because as a young child, I really learned that words could kill or heal. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to write. And of course, my father used to always say, little girls should be seen and not heard. So I
Right. Back in
raised,
the 50s. That was a big phrase. Yes.
yes, it was.
Yes.
So do you want me to tell you the bad morning and what I did?
Yes. Yes. Because you're just reacting. You came in as an honest, pure soul. And now at this point, 9 years into life, you're starting to react to the environment that you're in.
So it was the morning where my my father and mother were fighting, and they were throwing dishes and
Oh,
having one plate down and another plate, and my father had ripped the phone out of the wall about 5 minutes earlier because I talked past 2 minutes with my girlfriend, and I was in a corner cowering and thinking. I had just written a death poem about the week before, the first death poem I'd ever written. I'd been contemplating death because, well, I just knew I was the cause of my mom and dad's problems. And if they thought I was so stupid, I thought, well, I should just remove myself from their lives.
at
But
that age, that's what you concluded.
I concluded, and I thought about, cutting my wrist, but I couldn't stand the blood. And I thought about taking pills, but there weren't any to have. And I thought about even drinking Clorox. I was so desperate that I wrote a poem, and I was literally only 9. I think I might have even been 7, but it was
Wow.
all in rhyme. It just came out of me. Hell and fire I've done again. My heart's in pain, my soul's in sin. My anguished eyes and deviled lips shall know and see the fiery pit. To hell I'll go, and there I'll stay. No more to love, no more to play. So I had been contemplating death and
Wow. Wow. That
had,
that is that by a 7-year-old?
yeah.
That just gave me chills all over. I could feel your heart. Yes, I remember that you remember that is incredible too.
So I left school to go to school that day, and I went down to 35th Avenue, and I saw a car that was speeding, really speeding fast, faster than any car I'd ever seen down 35th. And I thought, oh, this is it. Has God sent this? And I ran in front of it,
Oh,
thinking that for sure I would be killed and wanting to be because it would solve my problem.
mm.
But
How now, obviously, what happened because you're still here, but that's incredible that you would have even thought that at that age and actually went through with it. So what happened at that moment?
at that moment, the car screeched to a stop, but in the grill, in those days, cars had grills, and the grill hit my body, and I felt the heat of it burning me, and I smelled this horrible burnt rubber, and I was in a state of shock. And at that moment, this woman, she had hair like you. She got out of the car, and she stood like a sentinel next to the car, and your beautiful hair, her hair, was straight up in the air. It was
Oh,
straight up in the air. And she said, "Don't you ever do that again." And I was stunned, and all of a sudden I realized how much pain I had caused another human being. And I
mm.
was so sad and so upset, and I could hear her little hiccups of crying. And then she got back in the car and drove off, and I heard my inner voice, which I had always talked to, say loud and clear, if you can't bring happiness to yourself, at least spend your life making other kids' lives happy.
What
And
an unusual message.
it was a very loud message, and
Very
then
clear.
very clear. And so I never contemplated killing myself again because I knew I was meant to live.
You had a purpose. You had
I
a
had a
purpose to
purpose.
make other people happy.
I did. I had a purpose to make other kids' lives better than mine.
Huh. It didn't necessarily take care of you, but it was a good start. It's an
Yes, it was.
excellent start.
But it
So
made me
then,
stop thinking about killing myself and
and
realizing that I was meant to live.
and so you set out on a quest to find out how to do that, how to make other kids' lives happy. And what did you do? How did you do that?
Well, I became an elementary school teacher.
Okay,
And
so you left home, you grew up, left home.
I did. I left home literally the day I turned 18.
Oh,
And I walked into the front room and I said, Daddy, I'm leaving home today. I'm 18 years old. And he
ah,
said, well, where are you going, Jacquie? And I said, well, I got myself a job as a nanny and I'm going to work for a lawyer's family in San Francisco. And
you were living in New York at the time?
no, I was living in Oakland.
Oakland, okay.
And I got myself as a job as a nanny with a lawyer's family in San Francisco. So
Okay.
I was going to go to live in their little garage house in San Francisco, which wasn't even as nice as where I was living, but it would be my own. And I
Yes.
would give their children, Andrew and John, baths. And my father said, well, Jacquie, if you stay home, I'll buy you a red Sunbeam Alpine and I'll send you to Mills College. And I said, oh, no, Daddy, I can't do that. I've already given my word. I'm going to leave. And he said, well, Jacquie, if you leave, you can never come back again. And I said, that's okay, Daddy. That's okay.
I'm happy with that. And so you never did.
Well, I've got a blank spot in my memory because I did get myself in a hot lot of trouble and I did get pregnant. And I'm not sure if my father actually he didn't know I was pregnant, but I'm not sure that I didn't come home for about a month before I moved out.
Yeah.
But I never came home to live.
Right. Right. I mean, so when you, of course, you went out into the world and you did and you became a nanny, and then however long that lasted, you eventually you found a relationship, right?
Right. Right.
And of course, that relationship was a carbon copy of your father, right?
No, actually, it was my mother,
Oh, oh, great.
my abusive mother.
Ah, and that though was a defining moment for you when you actually stood up to him, right?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
My husband, the one that was abusive. Yes. Okay, I will. Um, I was teaching school and I was one of out of 40 people, only two of us got jobs in Marin County. And I found a place in Mill Valley in the German Ambassador's Lodge, and it was only $65 a month. And I had my then husband, Tim, we moved over to that place together with our new daughter Anya.
Wow.
Her name was Timolyn then. And when I loved having her have all kinds of toys and everything, and she was playing with her friend Eric upstairs, who is only a month younger than she. And my husband Tim said, "Have those kids pick up all those toys right now, and if they don't pick them up, I'm going to throw them away." And I and I just kind of actually probably I said, I'll pick them up. We'll pick them up in a little bit. And then I was standing in front of the icebox and he said, do it now. And I said, I was taking child psychology. So I said, I know what's wrong with you. You were emotionally deprived as a child, and that's why you're so angry. And
Mhm.
I saw him, he was an ex-Marine, and I saw his face get red, and I saw him raise his arm and make a fist. And I had been hit so many kids as a child, I knew how to duck. So
Oh
I
my
ducked,
God.
and it made a huge dent in the refrigerator. And I
All that anger came out.
and so I said, okay, that's it. We're getting a divorce. I said,
Mhm.
I was an abused child and I'm not going to be an abused wife. And he said, oh, and he apologized. And I said, no, because if you did it once, you're going to do it again. And I said that I am not living with that.
And
So
you have a child to protect now.
I did.
Hmm.
So I did. He left
And
and
you stood up for
um,
yourself
I did.
and you had a voice. And how did that feel?
It felt sad because I wanted to have a marriage that lasted the rest of my life, and I went into it thinking he was so beautiful and handsome and smart, and he was. But I realized later that I had really married my mother, another abusive person.
Mm.
Although my mother did transform in my life.
Oh, she did. Well,
Yes, she did.
maybe that had to do something with you transforming. So you then became an elementary teacher, which
Right.
was part of your dharma, which was part of the way to make other kids happy. For how long did you do that?
37 years.
37 years. Did you love it?
I loved it. I was never bored a day in my life,
Mhm.
every day, and I treated those children like they were my own.
Mm. You got a chance to re-parent yourself or have another childhood, didn't you, through those
Yes, I
children's
did.
lives? Yeah, that makes sense. So you got to relive your childhood year after year after year when you would teach these children.
I did, and I always and there were things that came up, and I would know how to deal with them, like stealing, when they would steal things and I was able to teach children how to earn things and not to just give them things, and, that was very effective.
You have a great story about that in your book, 50s Hippies and Almost Enlightenment. There's a chapter in there called Trespassing. Can
Oh,
you tell us a little bit about that?
sure. Well, trespassing, when after the attempted suicide, I knew I needed to do something to help myself. And I didn't know really how, but I had a room downstairs that was completely unconnected to the rest of the house. It was built for me because my brother took my bedroom upstairs, my little newborn baby brother. And so at 10 o'clock every night, I would say goodnight to my mom and dad after we watched Gunsmoke or whatever, and walk down to my room and slam the door. And my father would hear the door slam and he would say, we had an intercom, and he would say, "Good night, Jacquie." And I'd say, "Good night, mom and dad. Good night." And then the intercom would click off. And then I would wait until 11 o'clock. And when I knew they were sleeping, I would pull on my red plaid jacket and open the door and keep it unlocked, and then quietly go down the back stairs to Jordan Road below. And I would walk for about an hour talking to Jesus and singing songs. And I'd go up to the Avenue Terrace Park and I'd swing and talk to God. And
How old were you at this point?
9 o'clock, I was 9. I did that from 9 to 18.
Oh my goodness. Every
Every
night.
night I snuck out in Oakland, and the streets were quiet, and I would go up Guido Avenue where all the streets were different, and they had Spanish tile roofs, and everyone was asleep, and it was quiet and peaceful, and there was no danger. And
Right.
I would walk past my girlfriend Marcia's house, and her mother was still up because she was a retired nurse and was up taking amphetamines all night.
Oh my goodness. You got
And
to see all of this, but it was peaceful for you. And
it's
you
peaceful.
what wasn't peaceful was at home. So the minute you got a chance to leave there at night, you felt free.
I did. And and there was no, I would ask divine spirit questions. And I would get answers.
Yeah.
And it was very
Mm.
comforting to me.
That's a beautiful part of your story because it's those moments where it's quiet that you can finally talk to spirit, talk to God, and actually listen, actually get some answers because there's no defending yourself or worried about anything that's going to harm you. You can actually let that spirit fly again. And that is beautiful. But what was the topic of trespassing? How did that come into play?
Well, the trespassing was just sneaking out every night
Ah,
and,
okay, I see.
against my parents' knowledge.
I see.
And that was, I changed the title of that to Getting Free.
Getting free, okay.
Yeah.
I do remember a story though where when you mentioned the kids about stealing,
All right.
and there was a story that you also had about stealing that taught you a lesson, right?
Yes.
Let's hear about that.
Okay. Well,
You're a great storyteller, by the way. I
oh,
can
thank you.
imagine your students probably just loved not this story, but your storytelling.
I they did, and I think we did a lot of writing together too. And a lot of my ex-students, I'm still in contact, and they're writers.
Fantastic. Oh, that's great.
This story, this one was, I was going to San Francisco State, and I had moved out, and wasn't sneaking out because I was on my own taking care of the little boys at Andrew and John, and I started to have doubts about God. My concept, of course, of God now has changed completely as from as a child. But my faith has not changed. It's just my concept of what divinity is. But as a child, as a grown up, I I felt I wasn't getting answers and I wasn't hearing God's voice. It was like the dark night of the soul. So
How old were you at this point?
I was just 18. I had just turned
Okay.
18. And I said, God, I am going to go to Saks Fifth Avenue and I'm going to steal something. And if you exist, I'm going to get caught. But if you don't exist, then I know that you're not there. And so I was all dressed up in my pink and yellow paisley dress, and my hair was all nice. And I went into Saks Fifth Avenue, and I had a little plastic bag, I guess, and I looked around very carefully. And I took something. I took something. It was an experiment. It wasn't anything I really wanted, but I took this sparkly blouse that was kind of sequiny. Everything there was very expensive. And then I kind of left very carefully and very carefully. And I walked 2 blocks and I felt, oh no, there's no God. Because I got 2 blocks up the street and then all of a sudden I felt an arm on a hand on my shoulder. And it was the woman, the store detective. She followed me and she strong-armed me back to the um, store and took me up to the second floor to meet of course, the manager of the store. And he said, "So you stole something?" And I said, "Yes, I did." And he said, "Well, we're going to have to call your parents." And oh, that was terrifying to me because I just left home and my parents, would be so angry with me, and I didn't know what would happen. And I said, "No, no, don't call my parents." And he said, "Well, if we don't call your parents, we're going to have to put you in jail." And I said, "We're going to have to call a paddy wagon." I said, "Okay, that's fine." So they
Yeah.
called the paddy
Oh
wagon.
my goodness.
And they put me in the paddy wagon, and with all these little, kind of bums and people, and it kind of smelled not so good, like sweat and other things.
Here
And
you are in your pink plaid outfit.
my pink paisley outfit.
Yes.
And then I go to the jail and they take my purse away and they fingerprint me and they book me. And they're just about ready and take all kinds of pictures, mug shots. And then they're just about to put me in a jail cell. And I'm looking in the jail cell and there's a lady sitting on the floor and there's a toilet. And this man walks by and he said, "Young lady, why are you going to jail?" And I said, "Well, I stole something." And he said, "Well, that's ridiculous. I'm bailing you out." And so he was a bail man and he took me to his place and he paid $40 to get me out of jail. And then I didn't have any money to pay him back. So I said I'd call my boyfriend, Tim. I wasn't married yet. And Tim brought $40 and bailed me out. And I got home just in time to give Andrew and John a bath.
Oh my goodness. All of this happened when you were
Yeah, when
you're
I was
still
still, and then
working.
I got and Tim suggested I get a lawyer, but I was too naive and too frightened. And I got a court date, and I didn't even have, at that time, I didn't even have a car. So I remember taking the bus super duper early to court. And and I had my white blouse on and my little tweed suit. And I got there about an hour early and was tearing up Kleenexes and talking to God. And then they finally called, Judge Mooney finally called my name. And he said, so you stole something. And I said, yes, Your Honor, I did. And he said, he said, this item you stole was $500. That makes it a felony.
Oh,
And he said, young lady, what were you planning to do before you did this? And I said, well, Your Honor, I was planning to be an elementary school teacher. And he looked at the court recorder and he said, strike the plea from the book. Well, he asked, how do I plead? I said, I pleaded guilty. And then he said, strike the plea from the book.
so you were not guilty. And what did he do?
Well, he just banged his gavel and I stood there crying and he let me go. And I've never heard of anything like that ever happening ever. Judge Mooney, and the court recorder was just looking at him with incredibility because that just doesn't happen.
So did that reinstall your faith in God?
Well, of course it did. It did. And I realized something more about it was that God wasn't just up in the sky like a Santa Claus granting wishes, that God was in all beings. God had been in the
Man
man,
that bailed you out.
a man who bailed me out, in Judge Mooney. And I began to see that God was indwelling in all people. And
I,
that was the biggest change of my life.
it saved your life. And then you went on to write children's books, which I absolutely love. Are any of these themes in the four children's books that you've written?
Well, no, I've written the first one is Desiree's Night Flight, and that is about a butterfly who wants to fly at night. And mother and father have told her only bats, owls, and moths fly at night. And of course, she does it anyway. And it's the hero's journey. She gets in a lot of trouble. This one is about listening to the still small voice within. And in the back, and I did a lot of research. That was my first one published in 2015, but there was no books about listening to your inner voice.
Right. No.
And so this is but it was a bit too, I, unfortunately, I don't know whether it's fortunate or not fortunate. I self-published because I knew that the publishing industry was so complicated and it would take so long to get the book out. And I was 65 when I started, and
Oh my gosh.
I thought I should self-publish so I could do it. So I did self-publish three more, but I'm now on my next one, which is The Day the Dinosaurs Danced. And I am going to get an agent and traditionally publish this one.
That's fantastic. And people can find out about this at your website, JacquieFaber.com.
That's it.
And
Only Jackie spelled Jacquie.
QUIEFABER.com. We'll
Right.
put
Yeah.
the website up here. And also, I just love that you communicate, you know how to tell stories, you know how to talk to kids. And the fact that you've written an entire book. Now, remind me how old you are, Jacquie.
Well, I'm 81 and I'll be 82 in
Oh
January
my
14th.
gosh. Wow. 82, and now you've written an entire memoir.
Yes, I'm still working on it. And I have to tell you, I realize that it's not about, I want to show how faith has changed my life, but I want to write a piece of writing that is really actually good writing. And I'm taking writing classes even now. And even though I've been working for 30 years writing, I'm taking now with Barbara Kyle, and she's the best teacher. She's a best-selling author, and she's done historical fiction. But I don't want to just write anything. I want it to be good literature, like The Glass Castle or Eat, Pray, and Love, something that can really entertain and nourish the reader at the same time.
Yes, absolutely. And also, this is so relevant for those many families are raising their children. They call them the unchurched. And these are families that don't prescribe to any actual religion, organized religion. And it's a very big trend these days that it is the message is about defining your own relationship with God and this is a wonderful message for people to read. If they're parents or if they're young, it doesn't really matter. This book would cross generations. And just because it's called 50s, Hippies, and Almost Enlightenment, what do you call almost enlightenment?
Well, I think it would be presumptuous to say that I am completely enlightened, but I would say that the ability to see the divinity in all beings and see that we are all in one circle together, that we are not separate is enlightenment, because that is so important. And the world could be otherwise if we looked at each other differently. And
Yes.
I don't want to change people and make them like me, but I want them to see that how faith in all the stories that I have told has given me strength, and they can find their own faith in their own way, but it is out there. And it's like Sri Ramakrishna said, the winds are always blowing, unfurl your sails and catch the wind. And Sri Ramakrishna is one of my great favorites, as well as Jesus and all the great ones. I
That that's why I love the fact that this book crosses all sorts of generations. You even mentioned that your granddaughter was interested in this because our younger generation is seeking because they weren't raised with typically with an organized religion because of the parents not trusting that religion any longer. Some are, of course, steep deep in tradition and honor still the tradition of their religions, but most are not. And you have this story of the things that you did. It's timeless. Kids are still doing this. 20, 18, 19, 20 in a different way are defiant, finding their way, testing the system, pressed up against coming from such a severe background of abuse. They're finding themselves, trying to find out where their voice is in all of it. And your story is an example of that. So, how did you finally find your voice, Jacquie?
well, I in the beginning, I wrote things just to get understand it and understand my life. And it was like putting a jigsaw puzzle together, all the pieces. And I just had to get out the pain and the angst. But in the end, I realized that I was writing to a reader, and I found my voice just by writing and writing and rewriting, and being in a lot of writing groups and having people say, well, what do you mean by that? And you're not getting that across. And having it took a lot of guts to expose myself to all the other writers and to read all their writing. But it was mainly a process of writing, rewriting, and prayer, because I wasn't sure, I always had that voice inside of me saying, even though I knew I really wasn't dumb, I had that voice inside of me saying, that is a possibility. I'm just stupid. I can't do this. And
No.
I
Yeah.
had to fight against that, but I just kept doing it. And I had signs that God wanted me to do this, a very simple signs. Like one time I had a chair it was so uncomfortable that my body was going out, and I was writing for hours, and my body was just killing me. And so I started writing standing up.
Yep, I do that a lot at my desk. I cannot
Yeah.
sit here for
So
very
I
long.
stood up and wrote, and
Yes.
then I was out walking by the marsh, and there was a chair that said free, and it was my size, like the three bears.
Oh
It was
my
a
gosh.
tiny little chair, and it was brand new, and it said free. And I was standing there with my mouth open looking at it. And these two girls were biking by, and this one girl said, "You want us to help you put that in your car?" And and I said, "Yeah, I do." So
That's really cute.
and this is my chair. So I've gotten little signs along the way that no matter how much I doubted myself, that my voice was legitimate, and all our voices are, and that it was okay for me to express myself. And as long as I was authentic, and real. And I wasn't trying to make people into being me. I was just trying to be the best version of who I am and share that.
You're an amazing example of this, of what it means to come from incredible adversity, to go finding yourself, bumping up against the things that, of course, you're going to bump up against when you're defining yourself. But then through writing, up to now, I mean, that's such a great example. Take a writing class, get into writing, write your story, write your memoir, write a weekend book, however it is, write it, and you will be able to find yourself and your voice through your writing. And that's an
Absolutely.
amazing example. And so I love the fact that you've written the children's books and that those are available. What does the ending of your story, your memoir, look like? You're still alive and thriving. So how do you write the end?
That's a very good point. How did I end it? That the world could be otherwise. It's just that if we saw that God was in all of us and not just, in an abstract religion or up in the sky or whatever way we viewed it, if we saw that God was indwelling in every single one of us here on the planet, and if we saw that no one was a stranger, the whole world was our own, the world could be otherwise. And I know that I've told that to my cousin, who is a born again Christian, and she said, "Do you really believe that? Do you really believe that no one is a stranger? The whole world is your own?" And I do believe that. Holy Mother Sri Sharada Devi said that, and I do believe it. Although it's just like if you met a tiger in the jungle, you could salute him from a distance. There are people who do not know we have divinity within them, and they have chosen the dark side, and you have to see that. And we're psychically and spiritually aware enough to be able to handle that. But I would like to see the world change, and that I knew this new generation, my granddaughter included, who's encouraged me to do this book. I know that these young people can change the world. I know they can. I have,
Yes.
and I think the world can be otherwise.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you are an example of that. Who you're being is an example of adventure and freedom and resilience. And now an amazing storyteller. So I encourage people to either not only look at the book and read the book, you can get all of this under JacquieFaber.com, JacquieFaber.com. We've got it here for you. And also to just understand that Jackie's story is very relevant. It's everyone's story. It's a timeless story. And there's so many people who don't have values, who don't quite understand where they're going based on where they came from. And let Jackie's story really be a guide on how to go within and create your own miracles, create your own journey, find your own voice. Thank you so much, Jacquie. I so appreciate you being our rising star today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you and take good care.
Thank you very much, Lisa, for having me.